All right, I have some questions here. I will get to as many as I can. Do you have anyone who would like to or be willing to sponsor our community fundraising auction? No, Will, but maybe someone else does. Will, wave your hand. Go see Will after this service. If you have a business or a club or a group that would like to be a sponsor for our auction. What author have you found to be particularly inspirational and why? I would say Becky Chambers is the one that I'm currently, that's currently coming to mind. She is a science fiction writer, often very, very far future science fiction, outer space, deep space travel, aliens, things like that. But also, she's in the category known as cozy sci-fi. If you've ever heard of cozy mysteries, they're mystery stories, but there's like no violence, no drama, which is my speed, cozy. And she is a queer author and very adept at weaving in queer identities and diverse genders without it being the primary plot point, but just sort of absorbing it into the story. And all of the stories are what I would call utopian sci-fi instead of dystopian sci-fi. So they, rather than show us all the terrible things that could happen, they show us all of the positive things that could happen if we maybe were to change our ways, which is incredibly inspiring and imagination-provoking. So I highly recommend Becky Chambers, especially her Monk and Robot series, which I did a sermon on a few years ago. And I think the first of those two books is in our lending library. What is your all-time favorite TV show and why? I mean, that probably changes. Like my taste in books, my taste in TV shows is zero drama, where people are nice to each other. I can't handle like reality TV where people are mean. So I would say either Schitt's Creek, and if you have started to watch Schitt's Creek and just not been able to get into it, skip ahead to the second season. The first season, my husband and I just didn't get it. They were kind of mean. They were like these rich, mean people, and we didn't get it. But it gets really good and really beautiful. And the other one, which I have included in a sermon before, is The Good Place, which is a sitcom, a handful of seasons long. Ted Danson is in it, along with a lot of other stars, and it's sort of about the questions of heaven and hell and right and wrong and ethics, and but it's hysterically funny and just really, really great. I think my favorite shows are both thought-provoking but nice. So if you have any recommendations. What is your favorite Bible verse or passage, and why is it meaningful to you? I have a couple. I would say Micah. I can't remember the verse, but it's when Micah is asking, what should we do? Someone is asking Micah what we should do to be in God's favor, and Micah says to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly. And the rest of this phrase is to walk humbly with your God. And so the idea that the prophets of the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, of which Micah was one, they tend to be pretty doom and gloom, because the prophets are sort of calling out the people of their time for their injustice and saying, if we don't get right, then God is going to have all these terrible things to happen. And I love that quote because that's all it is. To get right is to do justice, to love mercy, to be kind, to be humble. The other, I wouldn't call this a passage, it's a whole book, and you're going to be shocked. Just give me a second. Is Job. I love the book of Job, which is also in the Hebrew Bible, which you may know as the story of the man who is very, very righteous, and God sends a lot of terrible things Job's way, and to try to sort of test his faith, just breaks him, and really horrible things. And in the end, Job's faith is strong, and he's sort of repaid, which is not the part I love. It's like, you can have new children. That's not how it works. But the thing I love about it is that it is, I think, the most realistic example of real life. Stuff happens, terrible things happen, and Job is sort of crying out, saying, why? I didn't do anything wrong. Why is this happening? And there's a whole segment in the book of Job that scholars think was inserted later, and it's these 3 friends that come to sit with him, and they all have like really terrible explanations, like, well, you must have done something wrong, or we've all met those people who have a terrible explanation when you're going through something hard. And he's just like, no, he stands his ground. He's like, no, those answers are terrible. This is unfair. And, I don't believe in a God that sort of like picks certain people to bless or curse. But if I was going to describe the state of the world and reality, I would say that it's unfair. Terrible things happen, and there's not good answers for it. And the friend that is the one that sticks around is the one who basically just sits there with Job and sits with him. So that's what I like. Where do you see us 5 years from now? And I think us being the fellowship. Well, our governing board has a strategic plan that you may have heard about. And every year we rewrite the strategic plan for the coming 3 years. So the current strategic plan is currently in action right now for this coming program year. And year 2 is next year, and year 3 is the following year. And then at the end of the year, we will kind of look at it again and rework it, and everything will shift by 1 year so that we're always looking 3 years ahead. It's great. Any of you who've ever participated in a strategic planning process where you work really hard to write this 5 or 10-year plan, and then you put it on a shelf and never refer to it again. This is not that, and it's really, really great. But our current strategic plan has sort of an overarching statement that I think is really beautiful. And it basically says, if this strategic plan succeeds in 3 to 5 years, our congregation will have a deep understanding of shared ministry, a lot of involvement from every person at whatever level works for them, that people will know how to be involved. And that we will have a collective shared understanding of our UU shared values, and that everything we do in our congregation, whether it's making music, serving on a committee, leading services, teaching Sunday school, making coffee, all of it is the work of our faith. It is Unitarian Universalism in action. And so I hope that is where we are headed in 5 years, just sort of a deeper, more robust and theologically grounded understanding of our work together and what we're doing here. What is one thing that we as a congregation can do to make you or Reverend Hannah's job easier? And the next question kind of goes with it. How do you find the time? I don't. My job and Hannah's job is the coolest job just in the world. Really, really, we are so blessed and lucky to get to do what we do, to use a range of skills, to be close and connected with people, to be invited into important times in your life. I did a wedding last weekend for a fellowship youth who's now an adult. It was very cool. Or whether that's the bedside of someone who's dying, or someone who is spending 10 days in jail to pay for, something that they did, them wanting me to connect with them for that it's just such an honor. And it is a lot. It's a lot. And especially right now with Reverend Hannah being on sabbatical, it's extra. And I would say the thing that we really, really, really need from every single person, and if you are like, but she doesn't mean me, I do, I mean you, is to say yes to something. So if you are already serving on a committee or serving as an usher or teaching Sunday school or something like that, you have said yes. But if you are not doing that, figure out where you can say yes. We're getting ready to unveil a pretty massive and super exciting change in our religious exploration program for children and youth. We're going to need volunteers. We're going to need more volunteers. And we don't necessarily need people who can volunteer every single Sunday or even once a month, but even just one Sunday, if you can do that, we need you. We need people to make coffee. We need people to welcome visitors when they walk in the door. Seth can't do it all on his own. So that is what you can do. All right, I'm not 100% sure I understand this question, but I'm going to try my best. I have several friends who use the phrase, that is a God thing, for welcome experiences, but not for unwelcome experiences. I see both as science things, or life things, I would say, and I'm at a loss for words when this occurs in conversation. Any thoughts? I think that reminds me of the Answer Mountain story. I think for a lot of people, they have either inherited or found or created for themselves a theology, a belief about the world, about God, that is relatively simple. And that's fine. I mean, it's kind of nice to have a simple answer when we need it. In fact, I think Unitarian Universalism's lack of simple answers or unwillingness to provide those answers is one of the reasons that we don't attract people from more challenging backgrounds. If you are living in extreme poverty and you're worried that your son is going to get shot on the street, could you just give me an answer for a second and not help me wonder about it? I am not saying that simple answers are bad, but I'm saying they're not the ones that we provide as a faith. And so, yeah, I think some people believe in a God that does these beautiful things for individual people, and maybe there's not a lot of connection or thought about what that means then for the people who are not having those wonderful things happen to them. It's like when somebody thanks God for their Super Bowl win. I'm like, so God was not on the side of the other people, But that's a sort of logical leap that I think people aren't always willing to take. I took my kids to see a movie recently, and one of the previews, I don't know if any of you have been to the movies lately, one of the previews is for this movie where dinosaurs kind of like take over and they're like attacking the whole neighborhood, and this family is having to like fight them off. And there's a scene where the dad is in the living room with his 2 teenagers and the wife, and he says, "God is not going to let us die here." And the wife is like, "Oh, come on, you don't even go to church, and now you're telling the kids that God is going to save us." And the daughter says, "What does that say about all the people in our neighborhood that just got eaten?" If God is not going to let us die, but let the dinosaurs eat those people, what kind of God is that, right? But I think I wouldn't, my advice for what to say in that moment is just to go, maybe. Like, oh, that's a God thing, like that amazing thing that's happening. Well, maybe. If this friendship or relationship is important to you, just sometimes it's better to be kind than right. Unless you feel like having a conversation with that person, saying, that's not my belief, we could talk about it or something like that. But all right, so we're running out of time. So this last question that I'm going to get to is, what question has not been asked yet that you would like to answer? And I'm not going to tell you, but I did want to tease that coming up this program year, each month we're going to have monthly themes like we usually do, but we're going to actually pair them. So September and October are going to be sort of 2 halves of the same theme, then November and December, and then February and March, and then April and May. But January is going to be a standalone month, and there's 5 Sundays, and so we are going to do a series on big questions or existential questions, and the answers that Unitarian Universalism maybe provides. So things like, why are we here? What is our responsibility to other people's suffering? What do we do with evil if we don't believe in hell? I think the one Hannah's the most excited about is my retirement fund a sin? You can always count on Hannah to bring the fun. So, so make plans to be here in January or to watch from Zoom, because we're going to get to some of those questions. Thank you very much.